Before entering the story, please subscribe to the channel, like and share to help me. Thank you. The terrifying truth about what lived alongside early humans, the predator's world. The jungle never sleeps. Not 2 million years ago. Not ever. Branches snapped underfoot in the dense underbrush. But this wasn't the cautious tread of a human scout. It was heavier, more deliberate, more confident. Somewhere in the African savanna, a tribe of early Homo erectus had settled for the night. Huddled around a dying fire, they had no walls, no weapons beyond sticks and stones, just instinct and fear, because they weren't alone. Towering grass rustled under the weight of something primal. A Meganterian, a saber-toothed predator with 7-inch fangs stalked the camp from the shadows. It had smelled weakness, children, the old, the sick. Its brain, no bigger than a walnut, held a simple directive: kill, eat, repeat. This was the world of early humans, not a world of progress, but a world of survival. One where apex predators ruled the land and humans were the softest, slowest thing on the menu. We forget that. We look at today's lions, wolves, and bears as majestic creatures from a safe distance, behind glass and steel. But to our ancestors, they were nightmares made real, saber-toothed with jaws strong enough to crush skulls. Crocodilus thorbjarnarsoni, a 27-foot crocodile that could snatch a grown man from a riverbank and drag him under in seconds. Short-faced bears that stood 12 feet tall and ran faster than a racehorse. And giant hyenas, bone-crushing scavengers that hunted in packs and could overpower even the strongest hominin male. Humans, at that point, weren't the kings. They weren't even contenders. They were prey. But that fear, that constant, bone-deep panic, it did something. It forced the brain to evolve. It demanded cooperation. It sparked fire. Before the spear came the scream. Before the village came the loss. And before any tool was shaped, someone had to die. Because the first chapters of humanity weren't written with ink. They were written in blood. The predator's world. The fossil record doesn't lie. It tells a brutal truth. We were outmatched. Imagine a world teeming with giant constrictor snakes like Giganophis, stretching over 30 feet long, able to coil around and suffocate a grown human in minutes. Picture a forest alive with the haunting cries of terror birds, massive, flightless predators with hooked beaks and legs like battering rams, capable of crushing bones on impact. Or consider the Dinophilis, another saber-toothed cat, often called the false saber-tooth, whose remains have been discovered frighteningly close to early human settlements. Not just near them, but within them. These weren't isolated threats. They were everywhere, on land, in water, in trees, even at night. Early humans didn't just fight for food. They fought for sunlight, because night belonged to monsters. Without fire, we were blind. Without fire, we were meat. What's even more terrifying, many of these predators didn't see us as a challenge. To a Leptopheles or Crocodilus anthropophagus, a hominin was a prey to be stalked cautiously. It was an easy target, a warm meal. And yet, in this savage world, something unexplainable began to happen. We didn't go extinct, we adapted. That's the part most people miss. They think intelligence was inevitable, that humans were destined to dominate. But history suggests otherwise. We were not built to survive this world. We learned to survive it, because the human body is weak. Our claws are pathetic, our teeth useless in a fight. We don't outrun predators. We don't outclimb them. But we do one thing better than anything else on earth. We remember. One generation screams. The next one sharpens a stick. One child watches their father dragged into the dark. And 20 years later, that child sets the trap. We aren't the product of superiority. We're the result of terror transformed into tactics. The jungle didn't fear us, not yet. But something was waking up in the human mind. And once that fire was lit, everything began to change. The predator's world, the moment we stopped running, everything changed. We stood. We faced the night. We fought back. But make no mistake, this wasn't a cinematic moment of triumph. It was messy. It was brutal. It was trial and error, with lives on the line. The first weapons were crude. A jagged rock tied to a stick, a sharpened bone. Fire, used not just to cook but to burn predators out of hiding. Even the concept of a circle, our earliest campsites, wasn't about unity. It was about vision. Seeing in every direction. Seeing before the kill came. Because survival didn't mean dominance. It meant delay. Delayed death. For one more day. One more night. One more hunt. Our ancestors began to work together, not out of love, but out of necessity. They formed groups. Not families. not tribes. Units of survival. You watched my back while I slept. I warned you when I saw movement in the trees. You carried the wounded while I guarded the perimeter. That was the real birth of humanity, not art, not language, but strategy. We started observing the predators, studying their behavior, predicting, trapping, outsmarting. In time, a spear wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol, a sign that we were no longer just reacting. We were planning, and while many early humans still perished torn apart, swallowed whole, or starved in fear, some began to thrive. Small groups pushed back the edge of the kill zone. Fires burned longer. The nights got quieter. But fear never left. It simply became useful. It shaped our biology, our quick reflexes, our hearing, even our dreams. It burned into our stories, the monsters in the dark, the claws at the edge of the campfire. Even today, we still carry the echoes of that world in our DNA. The predator's world didn't vanish. We just learned to navigate it. And in doing so, we planted the seeds of something greater, a future where we would become the threat. But first, we had to survive the shadows. Monsters in the shadows, they didn't all have fangs. They didn't all roar. Some of the most terrifying creatures that lived alongside early humans made no sound at all until it was too late. You'd never see them coming. Not until the grass parted. Not until the ground snapped open. Not until your companion was already gone. Because not all monsters lived in the light. Take the ambushed masters, creatures whose very biology was designed for stealth kills, like Crocodilus anthropophagus, whose name literally means man-eating crocodile. It didn't lurk far from the water's edge like today's crocodiles. It patrolled the banks, waiting, studying, silent. It could lunge with lightning speed, jaws wide enough to crush bone instantly. Early humans had no answer for this kind of death. You go to drink and vanish, and then there were the giant hyenas, Pichicroccuta brevirostris. Think of a modern hyena, already one of the most efficient bone crushers on Earth. Now scale it up. Over 400 pounds, bigger than a lion, and intelligent enough to hunt in groups. Their laughter wasn't comical. It was a signal that you were surrounded. These beasts didn't just scavenge from humans. They dragged us from our shelters. Fossilized bones from Homo erectus had been found cracked open by these hyenas, our ancestors. Processed like carrion. And what about the terror birds, forest chassids? Flightless, fast, vicious. They stood 10 feet tall and ran up to 40 miles per hour. Their beaks were like scythes, evolved to crush skulls and tear through flesh. Humans couldn't outrun them, couldn't outfight them, so we avoided them, watched them from trees, moved only in daylight, built mental maps of danger zones and death trails. This is what people forget when they talk about survival of the fittest. It wasn't the strongest that lived. It was the most aware, the most cautious, the ones who listened to every snap of a twig, every flicker in the grass, because the shadows weren't empty. They were full of eyes, of claws, of monsters waiting to strike. The danger wasn't just brute force. Sometimes it was sheer alien presence, creatures so strange, so unfamiliar, they seemed stitched from nightmares. Take Arcticus simus, the short-faced bear. It wasn't just a bear. It was a biological anomaly, 12 feet tall when standing, with limbs built for sprinting, not lumbering. It could run faster than a racehorse over 40 miles per hour. Try to imagine that. You're sprinting across open land. You hear thundering behind you, and what's chasing you isn't a predator. It's a mountain on legs. But even worse were the ambiguous monsters, the ones that didn't fit neatly into categories. Gigantopithecus, the largest ape to ever walk the earth, 10 feet tall, possibly over 1,000 pounds. Its fossil record is fragmented. We don't know if it was purely herbivorous or omnivorous, but we know we share the same regions, the same forests, the same paths. What happens when two upright species, one armed with instinct, the other with growing intelligence, collide in the same territory? That question doesn't always end with fire or tools. Sometimes it ends with disappearance. Entire populations of early hominins vanished without explanation. No sign of migration, no signs of disease, just gone. Wiped out, perhaps by famine, perhaps by climate, or perhaps by competition. Because here's what's truly haunting. Early humans weren't always the victims of monstrous predators. Sometimes they were hunted by their own kind. Other hominins, stronger, larger, more territorial. There were no rules in this ancient world. No moral codes, no shared humanity. If you had fire, someone else would take it. If you had food, someone else would wait until dark. And if you had children, you slept with one eye open. This wasn't nature. It was war, a daily battle for seconds, for inches, for breath. Every shadow was suspect. Every rustle could be your last. And the only law was this: if you didn't become a monster, you were eaten by one. You might wonder how any humans survived this. How did naked, slow-moving, soft-skinned primates walk away from a world teeming with biological weapons? The answer: we became obsessive. Paranoia was our ally. Vigilance became our religion. We started building mental models, maps of predator ranges, nesting zones, safe trails. We tracked migration patterns not just of prey, but of killers. When a predator left a claw mark on a tree, we remembered it. When someone vanished by the river, we never drank there again. And slowly, very slowly, we began to anticipate death before it came. Fear became intelligence. Pain became pattern recognition. Loss became legacy. You see, other animals feared instinctively. But humans, we feared strategically. It's what gave birth to language, not poetry, but warnings. A grunt that meant danger. A look that meant run. A hand signal that saved a child's life. And then there were the stories. Sitting around a fire wasn't just warmth and bonding. It was a tactical download. We told stories of beasts not just to entertain, but to educate. Don't go to the river at dusk. Don't walk alone near the cliffs. Watch the trees. The silence means it's watching you. These weren't myths. They were manuals for survival. And they worked. Over generations, humans began to push back. We set traps, dug pits, crafted spears not for prey, but for defense. We selected our shelters with escape routes. We made fire not just for heat, but to burn fear into the eyes of the predator. And eventually, the monsters blinked first. One by one, the terror birds went extinct. The saber-toothed cats disappeared. The man-eating crocodiles lost territory. Not because we overpowered them, but because we outlasted them. Fear didn't break us. It sharpened us. And from the bones of every predator we buried, we built the myth of our own dominance. But just when we thought the worst was behind us, something else stepped out of the shadows, something that looked like us. When beasts walked upright, the most terrifying predator of all didn't crawl, didn't fly, didn't hide in rivers or leap from trees. It walked onto legs, stood tall, and looked almost exactly like us. Because early humans didn't walk this earth alone. They shared it with others. Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo floresiensis, Homo naledi, Homo heidelbergensis, and even more lost branches of the human family tree, many of whom we still know almost nothing about. But they weren't myths. They were real, and we lived beside them. This wasn't just a planet of predators and prey anymore. It was a planet of rivals. Imagine the confusion. You see a figure in the trees. It's not a lion, not a bird. It's a man, but it doesn't speak like you. It doesn't share food. It doesn't recognize your gestures. It doesn't understand you. And worse, it's not afraid. There is evidence buried deep in archaeological sites across Europe and Asia that some of these hominins weren't just competitors for resources. They were in conflict with U.S. fractured skulls, charred bones, stone tools embedded in rib cages. This wasn't coexistence. This was territorial warfare. And here's the terrifying twist: they were stronger than us. Neanderthals had thicker bones, greater muscle mass, more physical power. One-on-one, they'd win. But this world wasn't won through brute strength. It was won through strategy. Homo sapiens didn't overpower Neanderthals. We outnumbered them. We outorganized them. We passed knowledge faster, adapted quicker, and weaponized fire and memory in ways no hominin ever had before. Still, the scars of that rivalry remain, not just in the ground, but in our DNA. Today, every non-African human carries traces of Neanderthal genes. That means we didn't just fight them, we bred with them, we lived, loved, killed, and absorbed them. The line between us and them was never clean. But one thing was clear: there were other humans, and they weren't always friendly. What do you do when the thing hunting you wears your face? Imagine waking up to a distant shout in the night, not a beast howl, but words. Not your language, but close. Not your people, but similar. You grab a stone, you peer through the dark, and there they are, 5 of them, broad-chested, thick-jawed, holding spears, wearing furs, eyes locked on yours like a mirror tilted slightly wrong. This wasn't a lion in the tall grass. This was another tribe, another species, and the danger wasn't instinctual, it was strategic. Because Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other archaic humans weren't just animals. They planned. They tracked us. They knew the same shelters, the same hunting grounds, and they wanted what we wanted: food, fire, territory, future. Conflict was inevitable. Archaeological evidence across Europe and Asia suggests Homo sapiens pushed Neanderthals out over thousands of years, not overnight, not with a single battle, but slowly, brutally, strategically. Some we fought, some we interbred with, some we absorbed completely. But it didn't end there. There are fragments of other hominins' mysterious cousins we've never met, known only through bits of bone and ghostly strands of DNA. Species like the Red Deer Cave people in China, or the so-called Dragon Man skull from Harbin. They weren't Neanderthals. They weren't sapiens. They were something else, and they walked beside us in caves, in forests, on cliffsides. Their footprints crossed ours. Their eyes might have stared at us from across a fire line, silent and curious, just as afraid as we were, or just as dangerous. We didn't just evolve alongside monsters. We became monsters to each other, because when the apex minds collide, there's no natural balance, only domination or extinction. The wild had taught us how to run, but now we had to defend, not from beasts, but from beings who hunted not just with teeth, but with thought. And the scariest part, sometimes we were the ones who struck first. You might think it ended when we won, when Homo sapiens outlasted Neanderthals, when Denisovans vanished into the mists of time, when the last ancient footprints were buried beneath layers of ash and ice. But no, the war never really ended, because the monsters that walked upright never left. They're inside us. Every fear you feel in a dark forest, that's not about lions. That's not about snakes. It's ancient memory-coded fear of something human, but not quite. We don't fear growls. We fear footsteps. We don't fear the beast's claws. We fear the stranger's silence. The one who stares too long. The one who walks like you, but doesn't move like you. The deepest part of our brain remembers. Not all predators growled. Some whispered, and those whispers shaped our civilization. Because even after the last Neanderthal fell, we still built walls. We still kept watch at night. We still feared outsiders. We still told stories of the other, of monsters in human form, of those who came from the hills, the forests, the caves, and took myths of trolls. Ogres, shapeshifters. They weren't fairy tales. They were fossils of memory, echoes of real encounters, real battles, real blood spilled between species that shared 99% of the same DNA and still chose conflict over kinship. So what does it mean? It means that the greatest predator our species ever faced wasn't claws, wasn't speed, wasn't size. It was competition. Mind vs. mind. Tribe vs. tribe. Fire vs. fire. And we didn't survive because we were righteous. We survived because we were relentless. Because when we looked into the eyes of another upright walker and saw a threat, we struck first. That's the truth behind our rise. We didn't just beat the beasts. We outlived the other humans. But in doing so, we inherited their shadows, their violence, their memory, their hunger. And now, the monsters don't stalk the forests anymore. They live inside our blood. Fear birthed fire. The first spark of genius didn't come from peace. It came from panic, not from comfort, but from chaos. From the scream in the dark, from the growl behind the tree, from the moment a child watched their mother get taken and couldn't do a thing to stop it. That moment didn't break us. It transformed us. Because fear, when it doesn't destroy you, shapes you. And for early humans, fear wasn't a passing feeling, it was a constant drumbeat. Every footstep outside the camp, every flicker in the brush, every nightfall. They weren't afraid sometimes. They were afraid always. And in that crucible of fear, something unexplainable happened. We started creating. The sharpened stick became a spear. The thrown rock became a slingshot. The torch became a weapon. We didn't just hide from predators, we hunted them. We turned their own instincts against them. We studied their patterns, mapped their weaknesses, exploited their habits. We learned that a lion avoids flame, that a crocodile fears shallow water, that even a saber-tooth can be outmaneuvered if you're patient, and that knowledge gave birth to power. But it wasn't just tools. Fear gave us something deeper, something that changed the species forever. Community. Because no one survives alone in a predator's world. You need a watcher while you sleep, a runner to distract the beast, a hand to pull you from the river. Fear forced us to form alliances, not out of love, out of need. And from that need, language grew, cooperation evolved, emotions sharpened. Suddenly, we weren't just surviving, we were becoming human. Every scream carved out a new response. Every tragedy etched a lesson into the group memory. And every fire we lit burned a little brighter, lasted a little longer, because it wasn't about comfort anymore. It was about building something strong enough to survive fear itself. The greatest technologies on Earth didn't come from luxury. They came from desperation. Firestone blades, snares, walls, weapons, all of it born from terror. And the deeper the fear, the sharper the mind became. Because you can't outrun a lion forever. You can't hide from a saber-tooth every night. At some point, you either build something stronger or you die. So we started building. We dug trenches, carved cave symbols, maps of danger, instructions, rituals. We painted the walls not for art, but for memory, so the child could see what killed his uncle, so the tribe could remember where not to walk after dusk. Fear became storytelling, and storytelling became strategy. That's what separates us from every other creature in that ancient world. Animals flee danger. Humans pass it down. We didn't just respond to death, we prepared for it. And that preparation, it built identity. For the first time in history, humans weren't just reacting to nature, we were reshaping it. We burned forests to flush predators. We built traps to capture beasts bigger than us. We controlled fire so well it became a symbol of dominance of the border between safety and death. Other animals feared the dark. We lit it up. But even more powerful than fire was what burned within. That relentless refusal to bow. That invisible fire in the chest. The will to outlast the impossible. You see, predators made us bleed, but they also made us bold. They forced us to think beyond ourselves, to create systems, tools, teams, to stop living like prey and start living like something more. We didn't become human by accident. We were forged by claw, by fang, by fear. And the proof? We're still here. The monsters aren't, but their shadows remain, not to haunt us, to remind us that everything great we ever built was born when we stood up, clenched our fists, and said, "Not tonight." The legacy of those early battles isn't just written in bones or buried beneath ash. It lives in you. That startle when you hear a sound in the dark, that instinct to scan a crowd for danger, that surge of adrenaline when something doesn't feel right, it's not paranoia, it's ancestral memory. A survival alarm passed down through 1,000 generations who refused to die quietly. Because the humans who ignored the shadows, they didn't make it. The ones who panicked early, who stayed alert, who trusted their gut, those are your ancestors. And that's the true story of our evolution. Not one of slow, passive development, but of violent acceleration, triggered by the monsters that hunted us. Every innovation, every tool, every ritual came from one burning truth. We were not safe, and yet we kept going. Fear didn't cripple us, it catalyzed us. It made us smarter, faster, more connected. It forced us to build the systems that would one day become civilization. And even now, millions of years later, we're still using the same blueprint. We build cities with walls. We post guards. We invent systems of control, of surveillance, of deterrence. Why? Because deep down, we still remember. We remember being hunted. We remember being outnumbered. We remember the cold eyes in the dark and the breath that wasn't ours. And we remember the choice we made to stop running, to light the fire, to draw the line, to fight for every inch of daylight, and refuse to go quietly into extinction. That choice built everything. Not comfort, not intelligence, not peace, but pressure. And now, we live in a world where the predators are gone, but their ghosts live in our heartbeat, in our vigilance, in the fire we still carry forward. Because fear never left us. It just became fuel. We like to think we're far from that world now, that the days of predators and darkness are behind us. That evolution lifted us above the monsters. But the truth is, we still live with them. Not out there in here, inside our blood, inside our breath, inside the voice that says keep going when everything feels impossible. Because the monsters made us, the fear shaped us, and the fire, it never went out. It lives in how we protect our families, how we build, how we defend, how we dream of safety while preparing for war. You are the descendant of survivors, of warriors who stared down death with nothing but bone and will, who lost loved ones and kept going anyway. So when you feel fear, don't run from it. Respect it. It's a message, a compass, a force, and sometimes it's the only thing keeping you alive. Because comfort never built greatness. Danger did. So ask yourself, what's the fire you're meant to light? What shadows are you meant to challenge? And who are you becoming in the presence of fear? Because the monsters of today don't have fangs. They wear ties. They hide in silence. They whisper doubts. They wait for your inaction. So light your fire, sharpen your mind, and remember this. You were never safe, but you were always ready. If this story lit something inside you, don't let It die here. Share it, reflect on it, and subscribe to the channel for more truths that most people are afraid to face, because out here, in the modern jungle, we're still being hunted. But now, we know how to hunt back.